If you're new here, subscribe and hit like. You keep these stories alive. Tell me, where in the world are you listening from? The morning sun never reached the east wing of Valmont Manor. Ariana had learned to measure time by the shadows that crept across her floor, by the distant sound of church bells, by the hollow ache in her stomach that told her another day had passed. 3 years. 1,095 days of staring at the same four walls, of breathing stale air, of existing in a tomb made of silk and mahogany. She pressed her palm against the cold glass of the window, watching the world she could no longer touch. The gardens below bloomed with roses she would never smell, paths she would never walk, a life she would never live. Her reflection stared back at her, pale skin stretched too tight over sharp cheekbones, dark circles beneath eyes that had forgotten how to hope, a ghost in a nightgown that hung loose on her frame. The lock clicked. Ariana flinched, her body remembering before her mind could catch up. Marcus filled the doorway, his presence sucking the air from the room. He had their father's height, their mother's cold eyes, and something else, something cruel that was entirely his own. "Get dressed," he said without preamble. "You're going to the royal ball tonight." The words didn't make sense. Ariana stared at him, her heart beginning to hammer against her ribs. "What?" "The king has demanded the presence of all unmarried noblewomen." Marcus's jaw tightened, fury simmering beneath his controlled exterior. "Every single one. Refusal would raise questions I don't need answered." "I can't." Ariana's voice cracked. "I don't have anything to wear." "I haven't been outside in 3 years, Marcus finished, his tone mocking. "Yes, I'm aware. I'll have your old ball gown brought up. You'll wear it, you'll keep your mouth shut, and you'll tell anyone who asks that you've been delicate of health. Do you understand?" She understood that she was still his prisoner, even when he paraded her in public. She understood that one wrong word could make everything worse. She understood that she had stopped being a person the day their parents died and became nothing more than a problem to be managed. "I understand," she whispered. Marcus studied her for a moment, disgust flickering across his features. "You look like a corpse. Try to appear somewhat presentable. We leave at sunset." He turned to go, then paused. "And Ariana, don't embarrass me. The consequences would be unfortunate." The door closed. The lock turned. And Ariana sank to the floor, her entire body trembling. She was going to leave this room. After 3 years of begging, screaming, pleading, she was finally going to step outside. The irony tasted like ash in her mouth. Freedom delivered not as salvation, but as another form of control. The grand ballroom of the royal palace was a cathedral of light and sound. Chandeliers dripped crystal tears that scattered rainbow prisms across marble floors. Musicians played in the gallery above, their music weaving through conversations and laughter. Ladies in silk and jewels glided past like exotic birds, their perfume thick in the air, their lives painted in colors Ariana had forgotten existed. She stood at the edge of the room, trying to make herself invisible. The dress Marcus had given her was 3 years out of fashion, hastily altered to fit her thinner frame, the waist taken in with crude stitches that bit into her skin. Next to the other women, she looked exactly like what she was, a ghost who had wandered into the wrong world. Marcus's hand clamped around her upper arm, his fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. "Smile," he hissed near her ear. "You look like you're attending a funeral." Perhaps she was. The funeral of the girl she used to be, the life that had died 3 years ago in that locked room. Ariana forced her lips into something that might pass for a smile, though it felt more like a grimace. "Lord Valmont?" A portly duke approached, his wife trailing behind him. "Is this your sister? I'd heard she was unwell." "Delicate constitution," Marcus said smoothly, his grip tightening in warning. "But she's feeling much better now." "Aren't you, dear sister?" "Yes," Ariana managed. The words scraped her throat like broken glass. "Much better." The Duchess looked at her with something that might have been pity, then away. Ariana had become very good at recognizing that look, the one that said people saw something wrong but chose not to question it. It was easier that way, safer. The Duke and Duchess moved on. Marcus released her arm, leaving behind marks that would purple by morning. "Stay here," he ordered. "Don't move. Don't speak to anyone unless spoken to first. And for God's sake, stop looking like a frightened rabbit." He disappeared into the crowd, probably to find the gambling rooms or whatever other vices occupied his time. Ariana stood alone, surrounded by hundreds of people, and had never felt more isolated in her life. She focused on breathing, in and out. Simple, mechanical. She could do this. Just a few hours, and then she would return to her room, to her familiar cage. To the prison she at least understood. A hush fell over the ballroom. Ariana looked up and understood why. The royal family was entering. King Edward first, his face carved from stone and decades of absolute power. Then beside him, the crown prince. Prince Damien stopped breathing the moment he saw her. He had attended countless balls, had smiled at hundreds of simpering debutantes, had danced with enough women to fill a small army. He was heir to the throne, and every unmarried woman in the kingdom saw him as a prize to be won. He had learned to look without seeing, to smile without feeling, to perform the role expected of him while his mind was miles away. But then his eyes found her. She stood at the edge of the ballroom like a watercolor painting left in the rain, faded, delicate, on the verge of disappearing entirely. Her dress was wrong, her hair was wrong, everything about her presence screamed that she didn't belong. But it wasn't that which made Damien's heart slam against his ribs. It was the fear. It radiated from her in waves. He watched as a man, her brother he would later learn, gripped her arm with casual brutality, watched her flinch, watched her force a smile that looked like pain, and something inside Damien, something he had thought long dead from years of court politics and calculated moves, roared to life. Who had put that fear in her eyes, and how could he make them pay for it? Damien, his father's voice cut through his thoughts. Are you listening? Of course, father. The lie came easily. He had been lying to his father for years about his thoughts, his feelings, his growing resentment at being nothing more than a chess piece in the old man's games. Good. Now go dance with the visiting Duchess's daughter. We need to maintain the alliance. Damien nodded, but his eyes never left the girl in the faded dress. He watched as her brother left her alone, watched her shoulders sag with relief, watched her close her eyes as if gathering strength for a battle no one else could see. The Duchess's daughter was beautiful, accomplished, perfect. He danced with her and felt nothing. His mind was across the ballroom, calculating, planning. When the dance ended, he made his decision. The music started again, a waltz that pulled couples onto the floor like moths to flame. Ariana watched them spin and sway, their lives untouched by the weight that pressed down on her chest. She wondered what it felt like to be that free, to choose who to dance with, to laugh without permission. Then the crowd parted, and Prince Damien walked toward her. Ariana's breath caught in her throat. This couldn't be happening. The Crown Prince didn't notice women like her, broken things in borrowed dresses, girls who had been erased from society. He was moving towards someone behind her, surely, someone beautiful and whole. But he stopped in front of her. Up close, he was devastating. Dark hair that fell across his forehead, eyes like storm clouds, a jaw that looked carved from marble. And he was looking at her, really looking at her, in a way that made her feel like she might actually exist. Dance with me. His voice was deep, commanding, leaving no room for refusal. Sir. Ariana glanced around wildly, looking for markers, for permission, for some way to escape. I don't think... I'm not asking. Damien extended his hand, and the entire ballroom was watching now. Ladies whispered behind their fans. Men exchanged confused glances. The Crown Prince was supposed to dance with duchesses and princesses, not ghosts in old dresses. Ariana's hand trembled as she placed it in his. His fingers closed around hers, warm and firm, and he pulled her onto the dance floor with a possessiveness that should have frightened her. Perhaps it did. Perhaps that's why her heart was racing, why she couldn't quite catch her breath. Damien's hand settled on her waist, and Ariana gasped softly. When was the last time someone had touched her with anything other than cruelty? She couldn't remember. The contact burned through the thin fabric of her dress, his palms solid and warm against her spine. They began to move, and Ariana realized with distant surprise that her body remembered how to waltz. Muscle memory from a lifetime ago, when she had been her father's favorite, when her mother had hired the best dancing master in the country, when she had dreamed of nights like this. What's your name? Damien asked, his eyes never leaving her face. Lady Ariana Valmont, she whispered. Her voice sounded strange to her own ears. She so rarely used it these days. Valmont, he frowned slightly. The Duke of Ashford's sister. She nodded. Around them, other couples waltzed, but Ariana was only aware of him, his hand on her waist, his chest mere inches from hers, the way he guided her through the steps as if she weighed nothing at all. Why are you trembling? The question was soft, almost gentle, but there was something sharp beneath it. Anger, perhaps. Not at her, she sensed, but on her behalf. I'm not used to... She trailed off, unsure how to finish. Not used to being touched kindly, not used to being seen, not used to existing outside of her prison, to being looked at like you're real. Damien finished for her, and the accuracy of it made Ariana's eyes burn with tears she absolutely could not shed. Not here. Not now. Your Highness, I don't think— Good, he interrupted, spinning her through a turn with effortless grace. Thinking is overrated. Just dance with me, Ariana. He said her name like it was something precious, something worth remembering. No one had said her name like that in 3 years. Marcus spat it like a curse, servants whispered it with pity, but Damien spoke it like it mattered. The music swelled, and they moved together, and for one stolen moment, Ariana allowed herself to feel it. The silk of her dress swirling around her legs, the warmth of his hand, the possibility that maybe, just maybe, she could be more than a ghost. Then she saw Marcus. He stood at the edge of the dance floor, his face thunderous, his hands clenched into fists. He was furious. She would pay for this later, for drawing attention, for dancing with the Crown Prince without his permission, for daring to exist too loudly. The fear came crashing back. She stumbled, and Damien caught her instantly, his arm tightening around her waist. "Careful," he murmured. Then, following her gaze, "Who is that man? The one who looks like he wants to murder me." "My brother," Ariana whispered. "I should go. I shouldn't have—" "Why?" Damien's grip didn't loosen. If anything, he pulled her closer, and suddenly the dance felt less like a waltz and more like a claim. "Why do you need to go to him?" Because he would hurt her if she didn't. Because the punishment for this moment of freedom would be severe. Because she was his property, his burden, his prisoner, and she had no right to this. To music, to beauty, to being held by a prince who looked at her like she mattered. "I just do," she said instead. The music ended. Damien stopped moving, but he didn't release her. His eyes searched her face, seeing too much, understanding things she desperately needed him not to understand. "You're afraid of him." It wasn't a question. Ariana pulled away, or tried to, but his hand remained on her waist, a brand of heat that seared through fabric and skin and bone. "Thank you for the dance, Your Highness." She forced the words out with the last of her composure. "I must go now." "No." The word was soft, but absolute. You must not." Marcus cut through the crowd like a shark through water, his face a mask of false courtesy that didn't reach his eyes. "Your Highness," he said with a bow that was just this side of respectful, "I hope my sister didn't bore you too terribly. She's not used to such exalted company." "On the contrary," Damien said, and his tone could have frozen fire. "Lady Ariana is the most interesting woman I've met this evening. In fact, I find myself reluctant to return her to you." Marcus's smile tightened. "I'm sure Your Highness is simply being kind. Ariana's health is fragile. The excitement— She seems perfectly healthy to me." Damien's eyes narrowed. "Unless there's something you're not telling me, Lord Valmont." The challenge hung in the air between them. Ariana wanted to disappear, to melt into the marble floor and never be seen again. This was dangerous. This was going to make everything so much worse. "Of course not, Your Highness," Marcus said smoothly. "But the hour grows late, and I really must insist— Lady Ariana stays." Damien's voice cut across Marcus's protests like a blade. "By order of the Crown Prince." The ballroom had gone silent. Everyone was watching now, this strange drama playing out between the heir to the throne and a minor duke. Marcus's face went red, then white, fury and impotence warring across his features. "Your Highness, I don't understand." "You don't need to understand." Damien finally released Ariana, but only to turn fully toward Marcus, and there was something in his posture that made him seem suddenly larger, more dangerous. "You need to leave, now. Your sister will be accommodated in the palace guest wing tonight." "This is highly irregular," Marcus began. "This is an order." Damien's voice dropped to something cold and terrible. "Would you like to debate it further? I'm sure my father would be interested to hear why you're so desperate to remove your sister from court." Marcus's hands clenched at his sides. His eyes found Ariana's, and the promise in them was clear. She would pay for this. Maybe not tonight, maybe not tomorrow, but soon. "As Your Highness wishes," he finally said through gritted teeth. "I shall return for her in the morning." "We'll see," Damien said dismissively, already turning away as if Marcus no longer existed. Ariana stood frozen, her mind unable to process what had just happened. The Crown Prince had just commandeered her from her brother. She was supposed to stay in the palace. Tonight. Away from Marcus, away from the East Wing, away from everything she knew. Terror and hope warred in her chest, and she didn't know which one would win. Damien held out his arm to her. "Come," he said, gentler now. "You look like you're about to faint." She probably was. Her vision had gone spotty at the edges, her corset suddenly too tight, the room too hot, too bright, too loud. She placed her hand on his arm because she didn't know what else to do, and he led her away from Marcus, away from the ballroom, away from her old life. She didn't look back. She was too afraid of what she might see in her brother's eyes, too afraid of the future that was crashing toward her, like a wave she couldn't outrun. The palace guest quarters were nothing like Ariana's room in the East Wing. Moonlight streamed through tall windows that actually opened, pooling silver across plush carpets and velvet furniture. A fire crackled in the hearth. Fresh flowers perfumed the air. It was beautiful, it was terrifying. Ariana stood in the center of the room, her arms wrapped around herself, trying to understand what had just happened. One moment she had been Marcus's prisoner, the next she was— What? The Crown Prince's guest, his curiosity, his mistake. A knock at the door made her jump. She stared at it, her heart pounding. Maybe it was Marcus. Maybe he had convinced the king to overrule Damien's order. Maybe— Lady Ariana? A woman's voice, soft and kind. May I enter? His Highness sent me to assist you. Ariana opened the door to find a middle-aged woman in a lady's maid uniform, her face creased with smile lines and her eyes warm with sympathy. I'm Mrs. Hewitt, the woman said. I've brought a nightgown for you, and I thought perhaps you might like something to eat. His Highness mentioned you might be hungry. Hungry. The word hit Ariana like a physical blow. When was the last time someone had asked if she was hungry? Marcus fed her enough to keep her alive, but barely. Bread and water mostly. Sometimes cold soup. Never enough. Her voice broke. Yes, please. Mrs. Hewitt bustled in, setting down a tray laden with cheese, bread, cold chicken, fruit, and wine. Ariana stared at it, her stomach cramping with need and fear. This much food, real food. Go on, dear, Mrs. Hewitt encouraged. Eat. You look half-starved. Ariana reached for the bread with trembling hands. She bit into it, and the taste exploded across her tongue. Butter and salt and everything she had forgotten food could be. She couldn't help the small sound that escaped her throat, something between a sob and a sigh. Mrs. Hewitt watched her with knowing eyes, and Ariana realized the woman understood. She understood that this wasn't a delicate lady picking at her dinner. This was someone who didn't know when she would eat again, who had learned to be grateful for crumbs. Shame burned through Ariana's hunger. She forced herself to slow down, to eat like a lady instead of a starving animal, but her hands wouldn't stop shaking. How long? Mrs. Hewitt asked quietly. Ariana knew what she was asking. 3 years. The older woman's face crumpled with pity. Oh, child, that brother of yours— Another knock. Mrs. Hewitt moved to answer it, and Ariana heard low voices in the doorway. Then Mrs. Hewitt stepped aside and Prince Damien entered. He had removed his formal jacket, his cravat loosened, his hair slightly disheveled as if he'd been running his hands through it. He looked less like a prince and more like a man, and somehow that made him more dangerous. Leave us, he said to Mrs. Hewitt, his eyes never leaving Ariana. The maid hesitated. Your Highness, propriety— Leave us, Damien repeated, firmer this time, and closed the door. Mrs. Hewitt left, though the look she gave Ariana was worried. The door clicked shut, and Ariana was alone with the Crown Prince in her bedroom, still holding a half-eaten piece of bread. Damien studied her for a long moment, then his gaze dropped to the tray, to the food she had been devouring, to the evidence of her desperate hunger. How long did he starve you? His voice was deadly quiet. Ariana set down the bread. I don't know what you mean. Don't! He crossed the room in 3 strides, and suddenly he was right there, close enough that she could smell cedar and soap and something indefinably male. Don't lie to me, Ariana. I watched you eat. I saw the way you trembled when I touched you during our dance. I saw the fear in your eyes when you looked at your brother. So tell me, how long did Marcus Valmont keep you prisoner? The word hung between them. Prisoner. He had said it out loud, the truth she had never dared name. 3 years, she whispered. The admission broke something in her chest. He locked me in the East Wing after our parents died. I haven't left that room except for tonight. He said I was delicate, that I needed rest, but I wasn't sick. I was never sick. He just didn't want anyone to know that he had taken everything, the fortune, the estate, all of it. As long as I was hidden away, no one would question him. Damien's hands clenched into fists at his sides. Did he hurt you? Yes, in 1,000 small ways that left no visible marks, in hunger and isolation and the slow death of hope, in 3 years of staring at walls and wondering if anyone remembered she existed. He kept me alive, Ariana said carefully. That's more than some would do. That's not an answer. Damien reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and lifted her sleeve. The bruises from Marcus's grip earlier were already darkening on her pale skin, finger-shaped marks that told their own story. Damien stared at them, and something terrible moved across his face. When he spoke again, his voice was soft and more frightening than any shout. "He will never touch you again. Do you understand? You are under my protection now." "For how long?" The question escaped before Ariana could stop it. "Until tomorrow morning? Until Marcus comes to collect me?" "Marcus isn't coming to collect you." Damien's eyes met hers, storm grey and absolute. "You're not leaving this palace." "I don't understand." "Then let me make it simple." He stepped closer, and Ariana's back hit the wall, her breath catching. But he didn't touch her, just braced his hands on either side of her head, caging her in. "You are mine now." The words should have terrified her. They probably did terrify her. But there was something else beneath the fear, a treacherous flutter of something that felt dangerously like hope. "You can't just claim me," Ariana managed. "I'm not a possession." "No?" His head tilted, a predator studying prey. "Then why did watching you with that fear in your eyes make me want to burn down everything that put it there? Why did dancing with you feel like finding something I didn't know I'd lost? Why am I standing here, in your room, making promises I have no business making to a woman I met 3 hours ago?" Ariana's heart hammered against her ribs. "I don't know." "Neither do I." Damien's voice dropped to something raw. "But I know this. You're not going back to that room. You're not going back to him. Whatever it takes, whatever I have to do, you are safe now." "You don't even know me," she whispered. "No," he agreed, "but I'm going to. Every secret, every fear, every part of you that he tried to lock away. I'm going to know all of it." He pushed away from the wall, leaving her breathless and confused. At the door, he paused. "Eat. Sleep. In the morning, we'll figure out the rest. And if Marcus demands my return?" Damien smiled, and it was not a kind expression. "Let him try." Then he was gone, and Ariana was alone with the remains of her dinner, a soft bed she had no idea how to trust, and the terrifying knowledge that her life had just changed in ways she couldn't begin to understand. She was free of Marcus, but she had the sinking feeling she had just traded one cage for another. The only difference was that this time, her jailer made her heart race in ways that had nothing to do with fear, and she didn't know if that made things better or infinitely worse. Morning sunlight woke Ariana, and for a moment she forgot where she was. Then memory crashed back, the ball Damien freedom. She sat up slowly, her body aching from years of inactivity, her mind struggling to accept that the soft mattress beneath her was real, that the open windows were real, that any of this was real. A knock at the door. Mrs. Hewitt entered with a breakfast tray that could have fed 3 people. "Good morning, my lady. His Highness requested you join him in the gardens after you've eaten." Requested. As if Ariana had a choice in any of this. She ate, properly this time, though her stomach protested the amount, and dressed in one of the gowns Mrs. Hewitt had brought. It fit perfectly, the fabric soft against her skin, the color a deep sapphire that made her pale complexion look less corpse-like. Someone had paid attention to her measurements. Someone had cared enough to ensure she had clothes that fit. The gardens were a revelation. Ariana had seen them from her window at Valmont Manor, but experiencing them was different. The scent of roses and lavender, the warmth of sun on her skin, the sound of fountains and birdsong, it overwhelmed her senses in the best way. She had to stop walking several times just to remember how to breathe. Damien found her standing beside a fountain, her face tilted toward the sun, tears streaming down her cheeks. She didn't even realize she was crying until he spoke. "Ariana?" She turned, hastily wiping her eyes. "I'm sorry, Don't apologize." He closed the distance between them, and today he looked every inch the prince in his tailored clothes, his hair properly styled, though his eyes held the same intensity from last night. "When was the last time you felt sunlight?" 3 years, she admitted. "The east wing faces north. The sun never quite reaches it." Something dangerous flickered across Damien's face, but he only held out his arm. "Walk with me." They walked, and Ariana tried not to notice how every servant they passed bowed deeply, how every gardener averted their eyes, how the entire palace seemed to understand that she was under the crown prince's protection. She tried not to notice how Damien's hand covered hers on his arm, possessive and warm. She tried not to notice how safe she felt, despite everything. "Marcus will demand an audience with the king," Damien said conversationally, as if discussing the weather. "He'll claim I've overstepped my authority, that I've compromised your reputation. Haven't you? Ariana asked quietly. Probably. He smiled, unrepentant. Do you care? Did she? Her reputation had died 3 years ago when Marcus locked her away. The woman she had been, the debutante who cared about propriety and social standing, no longer existed. That girl had starved to death in a locked room. No, she realized. I don't care at all. Good. Damien steered her toward a secluded alcove surrounded by climbing roses. Because I have a proposition for you. Ariana's stomach tightened with wariness. Nothing came free. She had learned that lesson well. What kind of proposition? You stay here, in the palace, under my protection. He watched her face carefully. I'll make sure Marcus can't touch you. You'll have freedom, comfort, everything you were denied. And what do you want in return? Because there was always a price. Always. Damien's eyes darkened. Honestly, I'm still figuring that out. But for now, I just want to know you're safe. I want to see you smile without fear. I want to watch you remember what it's like to be alive. It sounded too good to be true. It probably was too good to be true. But Ariana was tired of being afraid, tired of cages, tired of merely surviving. What if I said yes? Then I'd say you're not leaving my sight. His hand came up to cup her cheek, his thumb brushing away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. Not today, not tomorrow, not until I'm certain you understand that you're not his anymore. And what am I? She whispered. If I'm not his? Damien leaned closer, his breath warm against her lips. Mine. The confrontation came 3 days later. Marcus arrived at the palace demanding an audience with the king, claiming his sister had been kidnapped, compromised, held against her will. The court was in an uproar. Speculation ran wild, and Ariana stood beside Damien in the throne room, her hand clasped in his, as Marcus made his case. Your Majesty, Marcus said, his voice dripping false concern. I only want what's best for my sister. She's been ill, confused. The excitement of court has clearly overwhelmed her fragile mind. I'm standing right here, Ariana said, surprising herself, and my mind is perfectly clear. Marcus's eyes narrowed. Ariana, please. You don't know what you're saying. I know exactly what I'm saying. She stepped forward, and Damien let her, though she felt his reluctance in the way his fingers tightened briefly before releasing hers. I know that you locked me in a room for 3 years. I know that you stole my inheritance. I know that you kept me prisoner while you spent my fortune on gambling and mistresses. The court gasped. Marcus's face went red. These are the delusions of a sick mind. Sick? Ariana's voice rose, 3 years of silence shattering. The only thing sick about me is the fear you put in my bones. You want me back so you can lock me away again, so no one discovers what you've done. That's enough. Marcus lunged forward, and Damien moved like lightning, putting himself between them, one hand on the sword at his hip. Touch her, Damien said softly, and lose the hand. The king stood from his throne, his face grave. Lord Valmont, these are serious accusations. If you have imprisoned your sister— I have done no such thing, Marcus protested. She's delusional. She needs rest, medical care. She needs to be away from you, Damien interrupted. And that's exactly where she's staying. Marcus turned to the king. Your Majesty, with all respect, your son has no authority to keep my sister here. She is my ward, my responsibility. Lady Ariana is of age, the king said thoughtfully. She is not your ward, Lord Valmont. If she wishes to remain at court, there's no legal barrier to her doing so. But propriety— Lady Ariana will be properly chaperoned, Damien said smoothly. Mrs. Hewitt has agreed to serve as her companion. All social conventions will be observed. Marcus stared at Ariana, and she saw the calculation in his eyes, the fury, the promise of retribution. But he also saw something he hadn't expected. She wasn't afraid anymore. Or rather, she was afraid, but she was more angry than afraid, and that made all the difference. This isn't over, Marcus said quietly. That fortune is mine. That manor is mine. You are mine. I was never yours, Ariana said. I was your prisoner. There's a difference. Marcus left, but the threat lingered in the air like smoke. Ariana stood in the throne room, her legs shaking, her heart pounding, unable to believe what she had just done. She had defied him. She had spoken her truth in front of the king, the court, everyone. Damien's hand found the small of her back, steadying her. Come, he murmured. You need to sit down before you fall down. She let him guide her out, let him take her to a private sitting room, let him press a glass of brandy into her trembling hands. She drank, coughed, drank again. The burn helped. "You were magnificent," Damien said, kneeling in front of her chair so their eyes were level. "Do you know that? The way you faced him." "I was terrified," Ariana admitted. "Yes, but you did it anyway. That's what courage is." His hands covered hers, warming them. "You're not his anymore, Ariana. You're free." "Am I?" She looked at him. This prince who had claimed her, protected her, possessed her in ways that should terrify her. "Or have I just traded one cage for another?" Damien went very still. "Do you feel caged here?" Did she? She had freedom to walk the gardens, to eat until she was full, to speak her mind. But she also couldn't leave without Damien's permission, couldn't make a move without his approval, couldn't exist outside the sphere of his protection. Was that freedom? Or just a prettier prison? "I don't know," she said honestly. "Then let me make something very clear." Damien stood, pulling her up with him, his hands on her waist. "You can leave, right now, if you want. I'll give you money, a house, protection from Marcus. You can build whatever life you choose and I won't stop you." Hope and terror warred in Ariana's chest. "Really, really," but his hands tightened possessively. "But I don't want you to go. I want you here, with me. And if you stay, it won't be as my prisoner. It will be because you choose to." "Why?" she whispered. "Why do you want me here?" "Because I've met 1,000 women, and not one of them made me feel the way you do. Because when I look at you, I don't see a duke's sister or a society lady. I see someone real, someone who survived something that should have broken her, someone worth knowing." "You barely know me," Ariana protested weakly. "Then let me know you." He leaned down, his forehead resting against hers. "Stay, Ariana. Not because you're afraid of Marcus, not because you have nowhere else to go. Stay because you want to see what this could be, you and me." Her heart raced. This was insane. She had known this man for 3 days, 3 days against 3 years of captivity, and he was asking her to choose him, to trust him, to risk her fragile new freedom on the possibility of something she didn't even have a name for. "If I stay," she said carefully, "it's my choice, not yours. Not Marcus's. Mine, yours," Damien agreed. "Always yours. And if I want to leave, then I'll let you go, even if it kills me." He pulled back enough to look at her. "But I'll fight like hell to convince you to stay first." Ariana surprised herself by laughing, a real laugh, not the hollow thing she had become. "You're very possessive for someone offering freedom." "I'm a prince," Damien said with a crooked smile. "We're not known for our restraint." The ball happened 2 weeks later. Damien had insisted. Ariana needed to be seen at court, needed to establish herself as a lady under royal protection, not a scandal or a victim. She had protested, but he had been immovable, and she was learning that when the crown prince decided something, resistance was largely futile. The gown he had commissioned for her was a masterpiece of deep emerald silk that made her skin glow and her eyes shine. Mrs. Hewitt had spent an hour on her hair, pinning it up in intricate curls that actually made her look beautiful. Ariana barely recognized the woman in the mirror. "You look like a queen," Mrs. Hewitt said with satisfaction. "I look like someone playing dress-up," Ariana countered, but she couldn't stop staring at her reflection. This woman, confident, elegant, alive, couldn't possibly be her. "You look perfect." Damien's voice came from the doorway, and when Ariana turned, her breath caught. He wore formal court attire, all black and gold, and he looked devastating. But it was the way he looked at her, like she was precious, like she was his, that made her knees weak. "Shall we?" He offered his arm. They entered the ballroom together, and this time Ariana didn't feel like a ghost. She felt real, solid, seen. Damien introduced her to dukes and duchesses, counts and countesses, all the important people she had once known and who had forgotten her existence. Some were kind, some were curious, some whispered behind their fans about the scandal. Ariana found she didn't care. Let them talk. She was alive. She was free. She was Lady Ariana. A young man appeared at her elbow, smiling warmly. "Edmund Fairfax, Earl of Somerset. I'm not sure if you remember me." She did, vaguely. They had been introduced years ago at some function. "Lord Fairfax, it's good to see you again. I was so pleased to hear you were at court." His smile was genuine, kind. "You look absolutely radiant this evening. Might I request the honor of a dance?" Before Ariana could answer, Damien's hand settled on her waist, possessive and firm. "Lady Ariana's card is full for the evening." Ariana blinked. "It is?" "It is," Damien said with absolute finality. his eyes not leaving the Earl's face. Lord Fairfax looked between them, clearly sensing the tension, and retreated with a polite bow. Perhaps another time. When he was gone, Ariana turned to Damien. That was rude. That was necessary. His jaw was tight. He was looking at you. People look at each other at balls, Ariana pointed out reasonably. It's generally how social interaction works. Not him, not you. Damien's hand flexed on her waist. No other man dances with you tonight, or any night. Something hot and confusing twisted in Ariana's stomach. She should be angry at his presumption. She should defend her right to dance with whoever she pleased, but instead she felt a treacherous thrill at his possessiveness, at being claimed so thoroughly. "You're being ridiculous," she managed weakly. "I'm being honest." Damien pulled her onto the dance floor as a waltz began, giving her no choice but to move with him. "I don't like other men looking at you. I definitely don't like them touching you, and the thought of you smiling at someone else the way you smiled at him makes me want to do something I'd probably regret." "I barely smiled at him," Ariana protested. "Exactly." Damien's eyes were storm-dark, intense. "That tiny smile, that should be mine. All of your smiles should be mine." "That's insane," she wanted to say. Possessive, controlling. But her heart was racing, her breath was short, and she couldn't deny the way his jealousy made her feel. Wanted, treasured, his. "That's very princely of you." "I'm not being a prince right now." His hand splayed across her back, pulling her closer than propriety allowed. "I'm being a man who wants something he can't have, yet." "What can't you have?" "You," he said simply. "All of you. Every thought, every smile, every moment. I want to know what you dream about. I want to hear you laugh without that shadow in your eyes. I want—" He stopped, his jaw clenching. "What?" Ariana whispered. "What do you want?" "Everything." The word was raw, honest, terrifying. "I want everything, Ariana, and I know I have no right to it. I know we've only known each other for 2 weeks. I know this is insane, but I don't care. When I look at you, I see mine, and I've never been good at sharing." Ariana's heart hammered against her ribs. She should run. This was too much, too fast, too intense, but she didn't want to run. She wanted to lean into it, into him, into this terrifying feeling that was nothing like fear and everything like falling. "I'm not a possession," she said, but it lacked conviction. "No," Damien agreed. "You're a woman I'm falling in love with, which is infinitely more terrifying." The music swelled. They moved together, and Ariana let herself imagine it, belonging to him not as a prisoner but as a partner, being his not through force, but through choice. It felt dangerous and wonderful and completely impossible. "You don't love me," she said. "You don't even know me. Then give me time to know you." His eyes searched hers. "Give me time to convince you that this us is real. And if you can't, then I'll let you go." But his arms tightened around her. "But I don't think I'll have to." The attack came at midnight. Ariana had retired to her rooms, dismissed Mrs. Hewitt for the evening, and was brushing her hair when she heard the window shatter. She spun around to find Marcus climbing through, glass crunching under his boots, fury etched in every line of his face. "Did you think I would just give up?" he snarled. "Did you think the Crown Prince could protect you forever?" Ariana backed away, her heart in her throat. "How did you—" "Money opens many doors, even palace doors." He advanced on her slowly, savoring her fear. "You've embarrassed me, Ariana, made me look like a fool in front of the king, turned my own sister against me. That requires punishment." "I'm not going back," Ariana said, her voice steadier than she felt. "You can't make me." "Can't I?" Marcus smiled, and it was terrible. "You're still mine, little sister. The law says so. And once I get you away from here, once I have you back in that room, no one will ever hear from you again." He lunged. Ariana screamed and ran, but he was faster, always faster. His hand closed around her hair, yanking her back with brutal force. Pain exploded across her scalp as he dragged her toward the window. "Let me go." She clawed at his hands, kicked, fought like she had never fought before. "You're coming with me." The door burst open. Damien stood there, his hair disheveled, his shirt half unbuttoned and murder in his eyes. He must have run from his own chambers when he heard her scream. "Get your hands off her." His voice was lethally quiet. "Now." Marcus smiled, tightening his grip on Ariana's hair until she cried out. "Or what, Your Highness? What will you do?" Damien's hand moved to his sword. "Something I should have done weeks ago. She's my sister. She's mine." The words tore out of Damien like a primal roar. "And you're never touching her again." He moved like violence given form, closing the distance in seconds. Marcus shoved Ariana away. She hit the floor hard and pulled a knife. The two men collided in a tangle of fury and steel. Ariana watched in horror as they fought, as blood appeared on Damien's shirt, as Marcus's face twisted with rage. This was real. This was happening. One of them was going to die. "Stop!" she screamed. "Please!" But they didn't stop. Marcus slashed with the knife, catching Damien across the ribs. Damien barely flinched, his fist connecting with Marcus's jaw with a sickening crack. They grappled, crashed into furniture, destroyed everything in their path. Guards burst in, finally, and pulled them apart. Marcus fought like a wild animal, screaming obscenities, promising revenge. Damien stood still, blood soaking his shirt, his eyes never leaving Ariana's face. "Take him to the dungeons," Damien ordered. "Charges: attempted kidnapping, assault on a lady under royal protection, and trespassing in the palace. He's to have no visitors, no communication with the outside world." "You can't do this," Marcus roared as the guards dragged him away. "She's mine. Mine." Then he was gone, and the room was silent, except for Ariana's ragged breathing. She stared at Damien, at the blood, at the evidence of what he had just done for her. "You're hurt," she whispered. "I'm fine." But he swayed slightly, and Ariana rushed to him, her hands fluttering uselessly over the wound in his side. "You're not fine, you're bleeding." "Ariana." He caught her hands, stilling them. "I'm fine. Are you hurt?" "No, I'm—" Her voice broke. "You could have died. He could have killed you. Then I would have died protecting you." Damien said it so simply, as if his life was a reasonable price to pay for hers. "That's what you do for people you love." The word hung between them, huge and terrifying and wonderful. "Love," Ariana whispered. "Yes." His hands came up to cup her face, his thumbs brushing away tears. "I love you. I've loved you since I saw you trembling in that ballroom. I loved you when you stood up to your brother. I love you now, terrified and brave and mine." "Damien, marry me." The words were fierce, desperate, not because of propriety or scandal or any other reason. "Marry me because I love you. Marry me because I want to wake up next to you every morning for the rest of my life. Marry me because the thought of you ever being hurt again makes me want to burn the world down." Ariana stared at him, this prince who had saved her, claimed her, fought for her, this man who looked at her like she was worth fighting for. "I'm broken," she whispered. "Marcus broke me. Then I'll spend the rest of my life helping you heal." Damien's voice was raw with emotion. "But you're not broken, Ariana. You're the strongest person I've ever met, and I want you, all of you, forever." "You're crazy," she said, but she was crying again, happy tears this time. "Probably." He smiled, and it transformed his face. "Is that a yes?" "It's—" She took a shaky breath. This was insane. It was too fast. It was everything she never thought she could have. "Yes, yes, I'll marry you." Damien kissed her then, deep and desperate and claiming, and Ariana kissed him back, pouring 3 years of loneliness and pain and hope into it. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. "Mine," he murmured. "Yours," she agreed. "But Damien." "Yes? If you ever get stabbed protecting me again, I'll kill you myself." He laughed, the sound rich and genuine. Fair enough. The wedding happened 3 weeks later. The cathedral was packed with nobility, the ceremony elaborate and traditional, but all Ariana saw was Damien. He stood at the altar in formal attire, his eyes never leaving her face as she walked down the aisle in white silk and lace, her hand steady on the archbishop's arm. "You are the most beautiful thing I've ever seen," Damien murmured as she reached him. "You're biased," she whispered back. "Absolutely." He took her hand, and his grip was warm, solid, real. "And I plan to stay that way forever." The archbishop cleared his throat and the ceremony began. Ariana barely heard the words. She was lost in Damien's eyes, in the promise of forever, in the impossible reality of this moment. She was getting married. She was choosing this. She was choosing him. "I, Damien Alexander Theodore, take you, Ariana Catherine Valmont, to be my wife," Damien said, his voice ringing clear through the cathedral. "I promise to protect you, to cherish you, to love you with everything I am. You are mine and I am yours from this day forward." Tears streamed down Ariana's face as she spoke her own vows. "I, Ariana Catherine Valmont, take you, Damien Alexander Theodore, to be my husband. I promise to trust you, to stand beside you, to love you with all that I am. You saved me, and now I choose you, forever." The archbishop pronounced them married, and Damien kissed her with such tenderness that the entire congregation seemed to sigh. When they finally broke apart, Ariana was smiling so wide her face hurt. "My wife," Damien murmured against her lips. "My husband," she replied, testing the words, finding them perfect. They walked back down the aisle together, and Ariana saw the faces watching them, some happy, some jealous, some confused by this strange romance that had happened so fast. She didn't care. She had spent 3 years caring what people thought, and she was done. The reception was a blur of dancing and champagne and well-wishes. Damien never left her side, his hand constantly on her waist, possessive and proud. When they finally escaped to their private chambers, their shared chambers now, Ariana felt her nerves return. "Nervous?" Damien asked, closing the door behind them. "A little," she admitted. He crossed to her slowly, giving her time to refuse, and began unpinning her hair. The dark curls fell around her shoulders, and he ran his fingers through them with something like reverence. "We don't have to." "I want to," Ariana interrupted. "I want you, all of you." Damien's eyes darkened. "All of me can be intense." "Good." She rose on her toes and kissed him. "I don't want gentle. I want real." What happened next was beyond words. Passion and tenderness and claim and surrender all tangled together. Damien loved her like a man who had been starving, and Ariana discovered that freedom tasted like his name on her lips, felt like his hands on her skin, sounded like the promises they whispered in the dark. Afterwards, she lay in his arms, her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat slow. "I love you," she said quietly. "I don't think I've said it yet. You have now." Damien pressed a kiss to her hair. "Say it again. I love you. Again. I love you. I love you. I love you." She laughed, giddy with it. "Happy?" Deliriously. He tightened his arms around her. "My wife. My Ariana. Mine. Possessive to the end," she teased. "Always," he agreed unrepentantly. "You married a prince. We don't share." Ariana smiled into the darkness. Once the word mine had meant prison. Now it meant belonging. Now it meant love. Now it meant home. 1 year later, Ariana stood in the palace gardens, her hand on her swollen belly, watching the sunset paint the sky gold and pink. A year. So much had changed in a year. Marcus had been tried and convicted, his lands and fortune forfeited, his title stripped. He was in prison now, where he would remain for the rest of his life. Ariana had testified at his trial, had spoken her truth without fear, and had walked away free in every sense of the word. She had taken her inheritance and done something useful with it, opened a home for women escaping abuse, a place where they could heal and learn and rebuild their lives. It was her way of turning pain into purpose, of ensuring no one else spent 3 years locked away and forgotten. And Damien, her husband, her love, her everything, he had become king 6 months ago when his father passed, and Ariana had become queen. It terrified her sometimes, the responsibility, but Damien never let her doubt herself. "You survived Marcus," he would say. "You can survive anything, even politics." Arms wrapped around her from behind, hands settling over hers on her belly. "How are my girls?" Damien murmured against her ear. "We're perfect." Ariana leaned back into him. "Though she's been kicking all day, I think she takes after you." "Strong and stubborn?" Damien laughed. "Excellent qualities in a princess." They stood together, watching the sun disappear, and Ariana thought about the girl she had been. Trapped, afraid, barely alive. That girl would never have believed this could be her life. A husband who loved her, a child on the way, freedom in every breath. "What are you thinking?" Damien asked. "That I was a prisoner once," Ariana said softly. "And now I'm a queen. But more than that, I'm free. Really, truly free." "You were always free," Damien corrected gently. "You just needed someone to remind you." "No." She turned in his arms, her hands framing his face. "I needed someone to love me enough to fight for me. You didn't just remind me I was free. You made me believe I deserved to be." Damien kissed her, sweet and slow, a promise renewed. "I'll spend the rest of our lives making sure you never forget." "Our lives," Ariana repeated, tasting the words. "I like the sound of that." "Good." His hand splayed possessively over her belly. "Because you're stuck with me forever. You and our daughter and however many other children we have, all of you. Mine. Ours," Ariana corrected with a smile. "We're ours. Even better." Damien pulled her close, and they stood together as stars began to appear, as the palace lit up behind them, as their future stretched out bright and beautiful and real. Ariana had been a prisoner, then she had been claimed, now she was simply loved, and that, she thought, was the best freedom of all.